the history I gathered tells me that my father was one of 16 kids, and they came from the very southern point of Ireland, in the little town of Bantry in the county of Cork. The farm is still there after all these years, and the last time I was there, Sonny Cronin was running the farm. He's an old bachelor. So Patrick came over, let's see, 87. I would say he was around a teenager, which would make him come over here probably at about 1903, 1904. He was born in Ireland in 1887, and he never went back. But can you imagine going all those years and never going back to your childhood? He joined some of his family that was already in the Boston area. He had a brother, Joe, whom I'm named after. He was in the, he went to Providence. He had a couple sisters that went to Pennsylvania, up in Pittsburgh, and they had another sister, Ann Newman, that went to Rosendale. So there are many of these brothers and sisters of his that went over to Boston with him. But he met my mother, and after a while got married and bought a house on Mozart Street. But during those years, I remember my father always worked in a factory 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. He worked as a fireman in a factory shoveling coal into the furnaces during the winter and maintenance during the rest of the year. And he was like a coal miner. He was black from his toes right up to his head, you know. Work all week, and then Friday night or Saturday night going home, they'd hit the local package store and pick up maybe 2 quarts of beer. And that was his treat all week. He'd have a couple beers, get his shoes shined Saturday night, get his suit all pressed, buy a cigar, and then he'd walk up to the church on Sunday morning. And that was, he was the king of the hill. And that was it. No television, no radio. I don't think he had any education. He might have had something as maybe a couple of years. They had the nuns. All these Irish towns had the nuns there, but until they could hold a machine or a plow, then they take them out of school, you know. But I don't think my father had any education. I never saw my father write or read, you know. But my mother could. He died my second year of college when I was at Loyola College in Montreal. And we had the wake in the house and on Round Hill Street. It was in the living room, and all the people would be outside in the street, and they got in line, they went in through the kitchen and came around, worked their way around, and there was all kinds of celebrities there, and James Michael Curley was there, and all the Irish shenanigans, you know. He just showed up because they go through the list every day, you know, the Pauls, who died, who passed away, and it was in his ward, and he just went to all the funerals. You couldn't get near him. There was a flock of his goons around him, you know, with 3 or 4 guys around him. My mother was born about the same age. I think there was only about a year or so between them. I don't know when she came over, whether it was before him or after him, but it was only a year or so. They were in their 20s when they got married. They proceeded to have 7 children, and she was mainly raised the kids all those years. She never went out to work for any length of time, you know. You'd have to see, I'll have to show you a picture here of my mother's house where she was born. And she was one of about 11, 12 kids, and 1 room. And they were all born in that house. And, you know, and there were cows in there. You talk about aseptic conditions, you know. This was amazing when you look at how these people survived. My mother, I think, went up to the 3rd, 4th grade. And after that, that was like graduating a PhD. So she still writes. She could write and write a letter, and she was a smart lady, I'll tell you, for what she had. But she had about somewhere between 15 and 20 people that she brought over from Ireland. And these people, all you had to do was get somebody in this country to sign a piece of paper saying that you are responsible for these people. And as soon as they come off, they'd hit my mother's house, and she'd put them up, she'd get them a job, they'd pay her rent, which is what she was after, and then after about 6 months or a year, they get married, and off they go. That was like Willie, Brian, Seamus, and all the sisters. And I used to come home on summer vacations or Christmas or something for vacation. And I didn't have a bed, you know, because they were all upstairs in the attic sleeping, and those are financially hard days. And she had to keep the furnace going, the electricity, and feed all these people. And they were real good guys. Some had drinking problems, but my mother handled them all very well. Robert was the oldest, yeah. And then there was Rita. And Robert was a good boy. Robert was working for First National before the war, and then he got drafted in the Army. He went and spent 2 or 3 years in England. He was in the medical corps. When he got out, he went back to First National as a meat cutter. But while he had been in the Army, he met his bride-to-be up in Pennsylvania there, and that's where my brother Robert met his wife, Marie Picker. They fell in love, and then after the war was over, he came back to Boston. She was up in Pennsylvania, a very close-knit family, German family, and he had his big family in Boston. She had her family there. He wanted her to come to Boston. She wanted him to go to Pennsylvania. So this went on for years and years. And they were both madly in love with each other. And then finally, Robert one day, he finally realized he wasn't going anywhere, he'd never get married, didn't care for anyone else. So he just packed up and he went to Pennsylvania. They got married, and they had, you know, Timmy and Bobby and Patty are their 3 kids. Robert bought the first car for the family. This was around 46, 47.
So your mother and father never had a car?
Never had a car, no. They never drove. And so anyway, this was the first car in the family. It was Robert's 48, 49. And then he went to Pennsylvania afterwards, so I never did get the chance to drive it. But when he got that car, he'd be out on the street 24 hours a day polishing that car up, you know. That was the first car he ever had, and he looked after it like a charm. My earliest recollection of this whole family was when I was a little child. I remember living on a 3rd floor of a tenement house in Boston on Mozart Street. And on that 3rd floor, my parents owned the house, and they rented out the other 2 apartments below. We lived there. I was born 32, and we were living at that house at that time. And I was the last of 7 kids. We stayed in that house till about 1940, 41, and that's when my oldest sister, Rita, passed away due to probably tuberculosis, I believe, which was quite common at the time. Rita, when she died, was about 22, 23. I think it was just before the war started. But she spent a lot of time in the hospital over at Mattapan and some of these other places. And then she'd come home for maybe 6 months. And she was a beautiful girl, too. When Rita died in 1940, she was buried, or she was waked up on the 3rd floor of the tenement house. They carried her casket 3 flights of stairs. And they brought the people up 3 flights. And I was up in the attic at the time. My brother Jimmy, we were sleeping up there. And then the people would go up to the attic afterwards who wanted, and they get a drink. Because you always got to have a drink at an Irish funeral, right? So these people, after they did the wake, they'd go up to the attic and they'd have a drink, and then they'd come down again. And then I remember them taking that casket down for them, and they always did this for 2 days, too. They did this 2 afternoons and 2 nights. And then the following morning, they'd come pick it up, take it up to the church, and have the funeral there. After Rita passed away, my mother was really shaken up by this incident, and it took her several years to get over it. I don't know if she ever did. And within a year, that would make me about 9 years old, we packed up and we moved to another house on Round Hill Street in Jamaica Plain. 56 Mozart Street and 44 Round Hill Street. And the real estate in both those places right now is out of sight. But when we were there, it was kind of a run-down, slummy area. And but it was a safe area. You could walk those streets at night. My older brothers My older family always relate to Mozart Street. I relate to Round Hill. We had two families. Jimmy, myself, and Dottie were kind of in the second family. And the first family was Richie, Robert, John, and what do you think of Rita. Rita, yeah. Okay, there was 7. We left Mozart Street. I believe my brother John, who had just gotten married during the war, 43, 44, John wanted to go in the service real bad, but he got turned down, couldn't pass the physical. He wanted to go in the Navy. And he took that physical a couple times, but John had a damaged kidney, and they wouldn't take him in the Navy. So he was also working at the Navy shipyard. So at the shipyard, he met his wife Lucy, and Lucy was from Cambridge, and I was in John's wedding. I was only around 13 or 14 at the time, but all the other guys were in the service. Lucy came from another big Italian family, D'Amelia's. In all honesty, at that time, the Irish stayed with the Irish, and the French with the French, and the Italians, etc. And I don't know, it seemed to me, I loved Lucy, and we got along great, and everyone did. But my old Irish parents, there was always the Italian, you know? And, but anyway, they had a little, you know, well, maybe it's a mother-in-law problem. Maybe that was the problem. But John was missed and well-liked by everybody. Jimmy was the hard luck guy of the family. He was the guy who just was always in the wrong time at the wrong place, and always looking for the shortcuts, and he, you know, he was always a kid that was being called up to see the nuns, you know, and if there was a gang in the corner, he wanted to belong to them, you know. In the inner city, it's different than this. This is fantasy land. But in the inner city, you either go down this corner or you go up the corner. And there's 2 different types there. This corner down here, these guys are mugging people, and the other people are all going to Holy Cross and Boston College, you know? So they had 2 different types of people, and Jimmy went down the street and I went up the street, and it has a lot to do as to where the environment is, you know? So he was, all the different guys he ran with, they all worked either as, you know, they worked for their living, you know. The other guys became teachers and lawyers and doctors, you know. So, yeah, there was worlds apart. Yeah, Jimmy was always into, you know, all the bad things that those kids that time were interested in. He always got in a little trouble here, or smoking, or drinking, or... I think he met Alice in Dorchester, and I don't know, God knows where he met her, but Alice was a very lovely lady. She was a very religious girl, and she was very good to her mother and looked after her mother and her family. But he had his boat and he had his cars, and those are the things that Jimmy liked, you know. He liked the possessions, and he knew everybody. He used to run the elevator down the State House. He knew every politician in town.
How did he get that job?
Through many of his political friends. They were all from Dorchester and Quincy and Chelsea, and they were all in the bars, and they all know each other. He could get on the phone and call up anyone just like that, you know. And he was good. Jimmy would help them all. He'd be there, give them a lift, give them a car, give them a ride in a boat, you know. And Dorothy was always the good one. She was the one who always kept us together, you know. She was the one who was always throwing the parties, and she, you know, get all the invitations out, and we've got to do this for the anniversaries, and she looked after my mother. She, you know. I first met Matt, he was had the pea jacket on, the Navy hat, and the first time I met him was he came to the house to pick her up, and he was in his uniform, and of course all the parents were on the porch and everything sitting there. It was around 1945, 46. They were crazy about each other, and they were both good kids, and they, you know, my mother, being the mother that she is, would say, you be home at 8 and you be home at 9. And so anyway, she was always kind of tough on Dottie, but Dottie towed the mark pretty well, and she put up with it. And then I remember when they wanted to get married, and my mother said, no, too young to get married. You got to wait. You're only, how old was she, 18, 19? And she said, no, I want you to wait longer. And Dottie didn't want to wait, and Matt wanted to get married. And so they got married, and everything went well. And, Matt was he was in great shape in those days, and he was a good boy. Yeah. Never smoked, drank, or any of the, So they got along fine, and I used to always hit them up for their cars. When I was in college, I never had any car. I'd call Dottie up. I wouldn't call Matt up, because Matt would be a little tougher than Dottie. But Dottie would, and Dottie always, all those years I was at school, she used to always write and send me a $10, $20 bill, something like that. And she didn't have it, she didn't have it to do it, but it was there. So she was very good. And I remember one time I got in trouble up at school. At the time they were going to kick me out of college, and I had to call Dottie, and Dottie had to talk to the rector of the college to, So anyway, she saved my butt on that. So I graduated from the same high school your mother went to. She went to Roxbury Memorial High School, and I went to Roxbury Memorial High School, but it was separated in the middle, boys and girls. So she went and she became a secretarial course, and I took the college course. And I had started out at Boston Latin. I was at Boston Latin, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and then I transferred. And it was mainly the work was so difficult, but I was making it, but I couldn't play football, I couldn't play baseball. And I said, this is crazy, And then nobody at home really cared what I was doing. I was the youngest kid, and they were all working and everything, and I'd just get up, have something to eat, and go to school, and whether I was going to Harvard or, that didn't matter to them. I remember someone once called up my mother and said, is Joe there? And she said, no, he's not here, he's gone to college. Well, what college? I don't know. Where is it? It's in Canada somewhere. And my mother didn't even know what school I was going to. They were not driving you to an education. They just would do their job. They would furnish a home. They'd get you clothing, and they'd provide heat and food. And that was their responsibility, which I think is adequate. That's fine. That's why I say they were not into education. They had survival was the number one. That was their goal.
So how would you describe the way you grew up? Rich, poor, middle class?
Very poor. My parents never went to a restaurant in their life. They never went out and had a dinner. So I'd say that's poor. I remember we used to have to get our wood from Canada Dry and Randall Fashion. My father had a wood truck, and I pushed his wood truck on the two wheels all the way over the Heat Street, and we get the wood and we bring it home, and we get the wood to start the fire, and then we'd put the coal on top of it, and then we'd have to shake the coals down, and then we'd have to empty the furnace out, and then throw the coal in the backyard because the city wouldn't pick it up. So, and I can give you a lot of instances like that, where you just know where you are, and you know what you only buy what you can afford. Getting out of high school, fill out college applications. You don't put down Harvard, you don't put down Yale, you don't put down Bryn Mawr, or you don't put down Wellesley, We put down Boston College, Holy Cross. Because at that time we were told by the church, you got to go to a Catholic school. If you don't, it's a mortal sin. If you're a Catholic and there's a Catholic school around, you go to that school. And I remember Father Coyne and Father O'Leary up at Blessed Sacrament telling me that. And I said, well, I was thinking of going to BU. BU? You can't go to Boston University? So anyway, that's the way one of the ways was schooling. In other words, we knew where we were, and we don't cross those boundaries. No one's going to Harvard or Yale. Yeah, mark-wise, I did well. I was captain of a baseball team, and I played 3 years of football, and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to university and play football there. So I went to Holy Cross, though, for about a month. I had been accepted to Boston College in Holy Cross. And I wanted to go to Holy Cross in the worst way, and I did go. I went up there for a month, but they came and they said, we want tuition. You got to register. I was playing football up there for about a month at the time. And I said, I have no money. I had a $300 scholarship, I think, from some fund in Boston on my marks. But they said, that's not enough. We'll give you a scholarship next year for football. I said, I can't wait till next year. I need it now. And right at that time, I had this opportunity to go to Loyola College in Montreal. So I came back home to Boston. I packed a bag, and then I got in touch with my buddy John Simpson, and he and I took the train to Montreal. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know where Montreal was. We went up in the train. It took us 12 hours. And then when we got there, we had to ask where the college was, and we had to walk across a big field. And they said, it's over in that direction. And what it was really was a little seminary. There was only 250 kids in that school. And we had around 60 kids in the first year. And said, how can you put a football team out? You know, you got 200 kids in the school. But they're all boys, no girls. And so anyway, we got there before the other students did. And
So John Simpson was a schoolmate, too?
He was my high school mate and my college mate. And we both played football, and we were roommates for a couple of years. He said, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for you. He's telling me. I said, why? What did I have to do with your success in life? He said, don't you remember when we were in college? And after he was there for about 3 weeks, he said, I'm sick. I want to get out of here. He said, this place, look at this. There's only about a couple hundred kids here. We don't know the language. We don't know this. We don't know that. I said, John, what are you going to do? Go back to Roxbury? I said, you got no choice. So anyway, he said, yeah, you're right. He said, I think of that a lot, he said, because if it weren't for you, I would have gone home. And if I did, he never would have graduated from college. So anyway, that's the chance we had. As far as having who was behind us, nobody.
So what did your mother and father think of you going to Montreal?
Well, my father was dead at the time. Well, he was there for the first year. I went there, I played football, and we came down and we played in Springfield. And he got on a bus with Mitch Hayes, my buddy, and we took the bus out, and he came and he watched the game. And then we drove back on the bus with him. And he enjoyed it. He, just one more kid. So, but he didn't mind. He was still working 6 days a week. I wasn't in trouble. I didn't have the police coming to the house, and I wasn't asking him for any money. I was drafted by the Giants on the last number, I believe, and I think they just go through a list. And this kid's a senior, they draft him. I think it was, and I was drafted. But I think what they did, I think they got my number mixed up with another kid's number or something. But it wasn't a serious draft. It wasn't like they wanted me or anything. I met this guy, Larry Sullivan, who was a football coach. He played at University of Notre Dame, and he was a coach at McGill. And so he came and he took all the guys he gets, because in Canada, you keep playing even when you're in graduate school, so long as you're going for a degree. So on our team, we had doctors and dentists and engineers and PhDs. So after that, he says, hey, come to McGill. We'll get you into dental school, which he helped get me into dental school, but my marks were good enough. We get into dental school, and we lived right in the field house on the football field, so I didn't have to pay any room or board. And so that's the way I did it for 4 years. And then I met my wife at the second year. We were playing the University of Toronto up in Hamilton, playing McMaster, and then my buddy fixed me up with his girlfriend's girlfriend, and she was all over me. I couldn't keep her hands off me. That was in 1956, I believe, and then we get married in 57. And we get married in Montreal, and all the family come up for the wedding. We had about 80, 90 people at the Queen's Hotel in Montreal. Yeah, so then after I got out of Montreal, I was drafted. I got orders from the U.S. Army, and I said, I thought they forgot all about that. But they didn't. They said, you've been on reserve here for 8 years, report to the Boston Army base. They gave me orders to go to Texas, and they gave me money for a uniform and a plane ticket and first month's salary, blah, blah, blah. And then from Texas, they gave me orders for France, just a little town of Orleans, Joan of Arc. And I went there for 3.5 years, and we had 2 children there. Pat and Dan were born there. And then after 3 or 4 years, they said, where do you want to go now? I said, I want to go to Fort Devens, because I want to come back to New England, look around, open up a practice, which is what I did. So while I was here, one of my classmates called and said, gee, there's a guy in town passed away, and his practice, he had a good practice, you might look into it, which I did, and I ended up buying it, and then we settled down in Leominster for 4 years, and then I came here in 1965, 64. Dad bought this house, and then we had 3 more children here. So that was it. Now we have 13 grandchildren. And I'm glad we have this opportunity while I'm still able to speak. But I think this family on the whole, you know, your mother and John and Robert and Rita, God, they're all good souls, you know. They're good, honest people, hardworking people. And my parents say maybe that's what it's in the genes. But it seems to be that they've followed the straight and long, narrow road, and they've got a lot to be proud of.